Welcome to Lockscape. Here at Lockscape, we're dedicated to motivating the next generation of wealth. So relax and enjoy while we give you Vanderbilt money. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It's interesting to hear that Vanderbilt family inherited the world's largest fortune, but they never became millionaires. The Vanderbilts were the iconic family of the Gilded Age with extravagant homes, fancy parties, and fascinating characters. Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt authored the perfect rags to riches story thanks to a growing railroad enterprise. However, almost instantly, all of their wealth vanished. How do you lose the world's largest fortune? Let's look at what happened to the Vanderbilt family and their wealth. The Vanderbilts, originally from the Netherlands, arrived in the United States in the late 17th century until Cornelius Vanderbilt arrived in the early 19th century. The Dutch immigrants were farmers who lived in relative obscurity. Born in 1974, Cornelius Vanderbilt, at 16 years old, decided to borrow $100 from his parents, roughly $2,000 today, to buy a perigord, a flat-bottomed sailing barge. Vanderbilt had been ferrying cargo from Staten Island to Manhattan with his father, but he finally decided to expand on his own. He agreed to split the earnings with his parents and started transporting cargo in New York Harbor, out-advertising and undermining the competition. In his first year, the intelligent guy made around $1,000, around $21,000 today, and instantly acquired many ships and then a small fleet at his disposal. He was one of several people who took advantage of the late 19th century social and technological advances to become insanely wealthy, and he deserves more credit than anyone else. He then went on to establish the largest railroad empire America had ever seen. Any fool can make a fortune. It takes a man of brains to hold onto it. Cornelius once told his son, but surprisingly, when he had the opportunity to establish every new generation of his family up for success, he totally screwed it up. Cornelius may have been a great businessman, but being a father was most certainly not something he was good at. It's ironic since he had 13 children from 2 marriages, he was known for being tough with his children, expecting them to discover things on their own rather than being taught. The children may have been born and raised in a wealthy family, but they never managed to learn how to manage it. He never specified any terms for how his heirs could use his inheritance, which resulted in mishandling of the family riches. The first Vanderbilts who did not increase the family fortune were Reginald and his brother Neely. Reginald Vanderbilt, Cornelius' youngest son, received a small inheritance from his father, but his older brother Alfred received most of the family wealth. Cornelius III, or Neely, the eldest son, spent a lot of money before falling out with his family and allegedly said every Vanderbilt son has increased his fortune except me. Reginald married Gloria Morgan, a 17-year-old girl in 1922. In 1924, she gave birth to their daughter Gloria, who was also named Gloria. Reginald Vanderbilt, also the grandfather of Anderson Cooper, a known news anchor, passed away at the age of 45, bankrupt and in debt after gambling away the majority of his inheritance. He lacked motivation and preferred to spend his money rather than accumulate it for his family. Also, he drank a lot. Reginald died of cirrhosis of the liver due to his addiction to alcohol. His wife and daughter relied on Gloria's trust fund interest payments, which had run out by the time Anderson was born. And if that's not bad enough, Cornelius gave 87% of his fortune to just one of his kids, infuriating the rest. Fortunately, despite a 2-year court battle with his siblings and cousins, William Vanderbilt did prove his father's decision completely right by more than doubling his fortune throughout his lifetime. However, at an early age, William, after working with one of his father's business competitors, experienced a traumatic mental breakdown. Afterwards, he spent the majority of his time on Staten Island, where he was successful in increasing the farm's revenues. After his father died, William was gradually offered greater opportunity to work inside the Commodore's railroad empire, which he eventually took over. After all, he managed to learn from his father's shortcomings and divided his fortune equally among his sons. Alva Vanderbilt enters the picture at this point. Alva was a socialite who married Cornelius' grandson in order to join the circle of New York's elite families. The Vanderbilts apparently were too new money to make it. Hence, to make a statement, Alva commissioned the construction of New York's largest mansion. The mansion was not just planned to be a new home for Alva's family, it was also supposed to be a battering ram from breaking into New York's elite society. The Vanderbilts spent $3 million on the magnificent and beautiful estate, but it wasn't enough to win the favor of Vanderbilt's old affluent neighbors. Alva planned to throw her own costume party and invite 1,000 people in order to wow everyone. Despite the fact that she still was not invited to hang out with other elites, and it was a success. The New York Times described the event as a fairyland, with guests wearing exquisite gowns, dazzling jewelry, and spectacular costumes in an attempt to outdo one another. There was a lot of spectacle, extravagance, and excess at the event. After the celebration, which cost the Vanderbilts $250,000, approximately $6 million today, Alva became the center of attention. As news spread, the desire for such recognition grew among the Vanderbilts, and the Fifth Avenue was soon crammed with several Vanderbilt mansions which belonged to everyone and anyone else in the family. Alva and the rest of the family were consumed by the desire for social acceptance. They looked for new ways to spend their money in order to gain fame and recognition. New York City's Fifth Avenue had become an exhibit of wealth and extravagance in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As new families accumulated wealth, they purchased and constructed spectacular mansions. The Vanderbilts had a number of Fifth Avenue properties, including Cornelius II's 130-room mansion, a small and big salon, a two-story ballroom, a gallery and separate dressing rooms, bedrooms and bathrooms for Cornelius II and his wife were all part of the Cornelius Vanderbilt II's house. Imported European furnishings were used throughout the property. The house, however, was demolished in 1926. Real estate developers purchased land along Fifth Avenue and rushed to build skyscrapers as New York began to change. Cornelius and William built their fortunes during a time when business regulation was non-existent. Because they had zero taxes to pay, their wealth grew exponentially as they monopolized entire sectors. However, towards the turn of the 20th century, when the Vanderbilts' fortune was already diminishing, things began to turn around. The Vanderbilts were not happy about income tax, gift tax, or estate tax, and it was yet another slap in the face. The Vanderbilts' wealth and inheritances were suddenly cut, and their lavish lifestyle became more difficult to sustain. To make the situation worse, the Vanderbilts struggled to maintain their lavish lives and vast estates during the Great Depression. They were obliged to open Biltmore to the public in 1930 to boost regional tourism and produce profit to protect the estate, despite the objection to giving up their way of life. Because of their desire for a luxurious lifestyle, the Vanderbilt fortune declined significantly with each generation. The Vanderbilt's economic power was fading by the time Cornelius, Commodore Vanderbilt's grandchildren, started inheriting the family fortune. In the early half of the 20th century, the New York Central Railroad went off the rails. The freight sector peaked in the 1920s, but in the 1930s it started to drop. Alternative types of transportation such as cars, barges, and buses were gaining ground in the shipping sector. Other routes of transportation began to overtake railroads by the end of World War II, leaving the Vanderbilts in a bad position. The family sold shares in its railroad holdings along with competitors to gain a controlling stake in their businesses. For example, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad bought a substantial portion of New York Central stock and took over control, only to lose the company in the 1950s and 1960s. New York Central, once the second largest railroad in the United States, became bankrupt in 1970. No one in the Vanderbilt family was among the richest people in the United States within 30 years following Commodore's death. None of the 120 people who attended the Vanderbilt family reunion in 1973 were millionaires. The Vanderbilt's fortune ran out when they were unable to build any substantial enterprises that will allow them to maintain their position as one of America's richest families. In your opinion, how did the Vanderbilts lose all their fortune? Please let us know in the comment section below, and if you loved the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.